want some sauce?
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.
So I'm using a yellow onion, but you can use a white onion. But since this is being cooked, yellow is fine. Okay. If it was raw, you would want to use a white onion. Okay. When you're making sandwiches, always use white onions. Okay, so we have our onions cut up, and I had already cut up some green bell pepper. Okay, so I've cut this up using the same machine here. Now what I've done is I've taken a piece of ribeye. This is from a larger ribeye, but I cut a piece off, and this is what I'm going to end up using for my beef. Now, there's a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll take this and they'll freeze it, and then to make it a little bit easier to cut. And I'm kind of against that, because when you freeze the meat, the water that's inside there crystallizes and it tears the cells. And then as soon as it thaws, it kind of changes the texture of the meat, and there's a bunch of moisture that can leave, right? Large pieces of fat like this will take off. But I'm going to end up using this fat, I'm going to render it, and this is what I'm going to end up frying my onions and stuff in, instead of using vegetable oil. So this stuff over here is going to end up going into the frying pan, and I'm going to render this down. Alright, so when you're looking at a piece of meat, okay, so when you're looking at a piece of meat, you're going to see that it has grain just like wood. Okay, so in this case it's kind of going this way. We don't want to cut it this way, we want to cut the meat this way. Okay, and you're going to see that's going to make small pieces, and that is going to end up being okay. But what we want is pieces of meat that are fairly thin. Okay, they're going to end up becoming even thinner after you start cooking it, but you don't want big pieces of meat that you have to chew on for an hour. And I'm using ribeye because there's a lot of flavor in it, okay, and because of the texture. Cutting it at a bias like that will also, against the grain, also makes it where it becomes tender. Okay, there's nothing worse than biting into a piece of meat and it feels like you're eating a sole of a shoe, you know. Now we're going to put a little seasoning on this. I'm going to put a little bit of black pepper. Some people will talk about a marinade, but I think you should avoid it. Here is a little bit of garlic powder. This is not garlic salt, this is garlic powder. And a little bit of onion powder. And we are just going to let this stuff kind of set in that for a while. You'll notice I didn't add any salt. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to add the salt last. Okay? Because if I add salt now, it's going to start sucking all the moisture out of this meat. And I don't want that to happen. One of the things about a Philly cheesesteak is it shouldn't be dry. You know, it should have some juice to it. So, you know, you start putting in your salt now, it could create a problem a little bit later on where it ends up making it where when you're cooking it, you're almost like steaming the meat, and you don't really want that. So I removed it, and you can see we have a nice amount of fat here. Okay, and this has got the ribeye flavor. And that's good stuff, Maynard. So what we're going to do now is we're going to slowly caramelize the onions. And, you know, when they generally make these, they have a big griddle that they can do this on and do a whole bunch of things at once. Unfortunately for me, I don't really have that. I have a big pan. And it's pretty much going to have to we're going to have to make this work. Okay, I'm going to throw in my meat. And the temperature right now, I have it like on medium. I don't have this at a high temperature at all. That's looking pretty good, so now I'm going to throw in some bell pepper. As it cooks, and it's gonna start releasing water. We can throw some mushrooms inside here. And these guys are definitely going to shrink down a lot during the time that they're cooking. Smells really good in here. A little ground black pepper. At this point I'm going to put a little salt in here. Trying to get those mushrooms to absorb juices and stuff that are around. Get them coated. Now you'll see that if we come over here, we got some of that brown stuff on the bottom. We can deglaze that a little bit with water. And let the mushrooms absorb that, so that way they have even more flavor. And deglazing just basically means you're kind of cleaning the dish with the food still in it, right? But taking that out and getting that into those mushrooms, that's adding a lot of flavor, okay? Usually with deglazing you do it with wine and stuff like that. Now sometimes what they do with their peppers is they have them in a brine, so there might be like a slight vinegary sweetness to it, okay? Not this case, okay? But we just added some moisture from the water, but we got everything cleaned up now. We can set this here. Provolone cheese. Think for the amount that we have here, that's probably good. This is ready to go into our sandwich roll. Now you may have seen my video on how to make EGs, an EGs grinder. And in that video I ended up making my own loaf here, okay? My own roll. So if you want to know how that's done, watch my video on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to slice this, but not all the way through. Now, what this is going to end up doing is we're going to have the steam go up inside the sandwich. Well, that broke and it wasn't supposed to. That sucks. But ideally, you don't want that. Okay, that's bad. But you end up having the steam come up. It softens the bread. It warms up the bread. Okay. And then we're going to scoop this stuff up. Cheese on the bottom. Flip it over. Now, because I don't have a griddle, this is going to be hard to do in a pan, but it can be done. And there we go, guys. Look at that. If we open this thing up, you can see all the cheese, you can see the meat, you can see the peppers, you can see the mushrooms. Part of the bread had broke on me, but it is what it is. Now, I know my wife is going to say that this is too big, so I cut it in half. If you want to see how I ended up making the roll, go to my video called How to Make the EGs Grinder, and I show you how to make the bread for it. And this broke right here. Total bummer. Let's check this out, guys. Look at that. Look at that. That's awesomeness. Anyway, guys, that's that. Until next time. Talk to you later.